Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Charge for Change program information session. My name is Emily Farjou, and I'm the Charge for Change program product manager. And the program is brought to you by Aviva Canada and Earth Day Canada. The program is in its second year now, and I'm very happy to be here with you today to give you more details about the program and answer any question you may have. Before continuing, I wanted to take a moment to say that I'm joining from Toronto, and I acknowledge that the land I'm joining from is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credits. If you're joining from other parts of Canada, let us know in the chat by acknowledging the land you're joining from as well. This webinar will be divided into two parts. First, a presentation of the Charge for Change program, and then a Q&A session where you will be able to ask your questions. We can all interact with each other and share information in the chat. And if you have any questions, make sure to use the Q&A functionality. Finally, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, my coworker Véronique Blais, Communications Officer at Earth Day Canada, will be happy to help you. And now, let me share my screen with you so I can start the presentation. All right, I hope you can all see my screen. So as you can see here, the goal of the Charge for Change program is to bring EV charging infrastructure to your community. And the way the program is doing that is through the investment that Aviva Canada is making for the program over 3 years. So today's content, we'll go over different elements. First, we'll go over how the program came to be and how the Aviva and Earth Day Canada came to be as well, and the roles that each organization will have within the program. Then we'll go over the advantages for communities as well as the positive impacts on society and the environment. And we'll talk a little bit about what happened in the first year of the program. Then we'll dive into the program objectives and the available funding before moving on to eligibility criteria and eligible project costs. And we'll finish by going over the program timeline and the application process. So how did the Charge for Change program came to be? Well, we all know that the cost of infrastructure is a main obstacle to EV transition for many communities. And even though the federal and provincial governments are putting financial assistance programs, it is always welcome when new programs are around. Aviva Canada wanted to play a role in the EV transition by supporting communities and their members towards the EV transition, as well as help build a sustainable future. Earth Day Canada is a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to help individuals, organizations, and municipalities reduce their impact on the environment. And the way it does that is through various programs in several fields, including sustainable mobility. We know that a large portion of greenhouse gas emissions come from transportation, and Earth Day Canada is delighted to be able to support Aviva Canada in its initiative to accelerate EV transition through the Charge for Change program. Now let's look at the role each of the organization will have for the program. Aviva's main role is to provide the funds for the program to the beneficiary communities, and it is a member of the Evaluation and Selection Committee as well. As for Earth Day Canada, it is the sponsor of the program, and as such, it will provide support to applicants during the application period, and support to the beneficiary communities during the construction phase. Earth Day Canada is also a member of the Evaluation and Selection Committee, and it will also be the one distributing the funds once the communities are selected. If we look at the advantages for the communities to apply to the program, as well as the positive impacts the program has, the main advantage for communities is the removal of the financial barrier to install EV infrastructure. We'll go over this in just a moment, but 100% of the project costs are covered by the program. And so by removing this financial barrier and installing more EV infrastructure in communities, then it supports citizens in the transition from fossil fuel vehicles to EVs. We know that a main barrier for people to transition is the fear of running out of battery and not being able to charge their cars on time when traveling. And so having more infrastructure in place will bring them relief and will help them transition more easily. And then another greater benefit for everyone is the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. By removing fossil fuel vehicles off the road, they will reduce considerably. And yeah, that's another one of the main benefits. So how did the first year of the program impact the communities? Well, 7 communities were able to receive funding in 2023. And out of those 7 communities, 5 of them were able to install their very first EV chargers. And today, as we are having this webinar now, 3 communities already have their chargers in service and ready to use for their community. So as I was saying on the first slide, the main objective of the program is to fund electric vehicle charging stations in underserved communities across Canada. We'll go back to the definition of underserved communities when we talk about the eligibility criteria, but for now, let's focus on the available funding. So each year, $750,000 are available to fund EV infrastructure. And as I mentioned before, the program is running for 3 years, and we're now in the 2nd year of the program. So for this year, at least 6 communities will be selected. And I'm saying at least because it will depend on the project budget of each applicant. If those budgets are lower, then more communities will be able to receive funding. The maximum funding available per community is $125,000. And as I was saying before, the program covers 100% of the project costs. So if we look at the eligibility criteria now, here I will only address the main eligibility criteria. There are a few more, and they are available for review on the application guide available on the Charge for Change website. So I will divide this section into 2. First of all, the eligibility criteria for applicants, and then we'll go over the project requirements. All applicants must be located in Canada, and all applicants must be either a municipality with less than 100,000 residents or an Indigenous community. Now, we know that for smaller communities, be that municipalities or Indigenous communities, having the human resources to take on such a project can be a barrier. And you may be already working with some local nonprofits for other projects. So if that's something that you do and you would like the nonprofit you're used to working with to help you with your Charge for Change application, that is definitely possible. We just ask that the application is submitted on behalf of the municipality. So either the nonprofit submits it on your behalf, or helps you prepare the application and someone in the municipality submits the application. Then if there are any fees associated to working with a nonprofit, we ask that they are submitted under the professional services section for the eligible costs for the project, and we'll go over that in just a moment. And then the third condition is that the funds be distributed directly to the municipality. Now, another criterion for applicants is that the ratio of residents per charging head needs to be higher than the provincial average. So what does it all mean? First of all, here we're only talking about public charging stations and public charging heads. The way a public charging station is defined within the program is that it is a charging station that is available to the general public, and that the charger can be built on publicly owned land or privately owned land. Those are part of the definition of a public charger for the program. Then what we mean by charging head here is the plug that you will put into the car to charge it. Now, you may wonder how to calculate your own ratio of residents per charging head for your community. And so to do that, if you go on websites like ChargeHub or PlugShare, you will be able to find the number of charging head in your community that you'll be able to match against your population. And then you'll see if you fall above or under the provincial average. The provincial average are not listed here, but they are available in the application guide online. Now, if we look at the requirements for the projects, one of the requirements is that the projects will increase localized charging opportunities in your community. And here we're talking about public places, on-street parking, multi-unit residential buildings, and workplaces. I'd like to talk a little bit about multi-unit residential buildings here, because we know that 80% of the charging happens at home. And so it is important to give chargers to those MURBs too. So maybe one way we can help them is by installing on-street public chargers close to the residences. And if you have any residences in your community like that, maybe you want to get in touch with the building manager and start a conversation and see if that's something that would fit with them. Before taking it on to the next stage and installing chargers within their own parking lot. As for the chargers themselves, they must be new permanent installations of level 2 chargers certified for use in Canada. The program only covers level 2 chargers here, because they fit perfectly with the type of sites that are favored for the program. People will spend several hours at home. They will also spend several hours in their workplaces. And that gives ample time to level 2 chargers to do its job to charge the car and then get on the road. Another project requirement is that at least 4 charging heads must be included in the project. And that can be a combination of dual head chargers, single head chargers. They can all be on the same site or on several sites, depending on the needs of your community. Finally, all electric vehicle charging stations must be branded with the Aviva Canada and Earth Day Canada branding. And those will be provided to you when they are needed. Before moving on to the eligible project costs, I wanted to take some time here to talk about an EV infrastructure project by itself. And maybe one keyword that it's important to keep in mind when starting such a project is having vision. And what I mean by vision is that if a few years ago EV drivers were happy with finding a functioning EV charger, now they are expecting more of their charging experience, and they want to have an overall good experience. A key element to take into account for this overall good experience is safety. People want to feel safe when they charge their car, and that goes with good lighting, for example. And that safety component is especially true for women. A recent geotab study, came out, and nearly half of the Canadian women who were interviewed for that study said that easily accessible, well-lit charging stations in less remote area will help convince them to switch to EVs. So couple of keywords to keep in mind here: well-lit and with amenities close by, so that people feel more safe and also have some activities to do while their cars are charging. Other elements to consider, maybe that's more of a comfort topic, but it's still important, like having garbage bins at the proximity of the charging stations will be important for drivers. And if we want to dream, maybe having a roof over the charging stations is also something to consider to protect people from the rain when they charge their cars. So this might seem like additional costs for a project, but I think if you're thinking of submitting a project to the Charge for Change program, it's important to take these things into account now, because upgrades might be needed years later when these elements become the standard for an EV charging station. So why not take the opportunity to add them now in your project, since 100% of the project costs are covered by the program. Talking about the project costs, let's move on to the eligible one. So there is a list here of several categories that will fall into that will be covered by the program. The first one is salaries and benefits, and these are for municipal employees who will be working directly on the program. Then you have professional services. Those will be for your contractors, like the electrician that will come do the installation, the nonprofit that you might be working with to help support you for your application and your project. But as you can see, there are other categories that fall under this section, and you can review them as well on the application guide. The next category is the capital expenses. So this will mostly be for the EV chargers themselves and any other equipment that you will add to the station, like bollards to protect the chargers from cars backing up into the charger, garbage bins, lighting, if that's something that you want to add. Then license fees, permits, and environmental assessments, if they are necessary, are also covered by the program. And finally, taxes also. However, if your community is eligible for any tax rebates, those will have to be left out of the project costs. If you're unsure if your community is eligible for any tax rebates, Veronique will put a link in the chat that lists taxes and rebates for municipalities. And I would also suggest you get in touch with your finance departments as they might be able to give you more information. Now, something that we decided to add for the second year of the program is a budget template. So this budget template is also available on the Charge for Change website, and you will find the same categories that I just went over now. With description of what they cover. You will also see some lines highlighted in yellow. Those are optional costs. So depending on the scale of the project, maybe you will need more than one person to work on it, or depending on the site, if it's already well lit or not, if you're considering adding some lights, then you can add this to your project. As for the program timeline, well, the application period is now open, so you can start submitting an application whenever you want, and it will close on February 22nd, 2024. After that, we will go into the evaluation period where the applications will be reviewed by the Evaluation and Selection Committee, and the beneficiary communities will be selected. That will happen between February 23rd and April 12th, 2024, before public announcement of the beneficiary communities is made the week of April 15th, just before Earth Day. Then the EV infrastructure construction period will start, and it will do so after signing a funding agreement between the selected community and Earth Day Canada. The funds distribution will happen along the same timeline as the construction phase. And we're doing so, we wanted to, we know that smaller communities have difficulty providing upfront budget for such projects. And so we wanted to help them by giving them a portion of the funds upon the signature of the funding agreement before the construction starts. After that, the funds will be distributed throughout the construction period and once the project is completed. Finally, let's talk a little bit about the application process. It is a two-part process. The first one will be to go online and fill out a form available on the Charge for Change website. On this form, there will be a section to fill out about your community. There will also be a section about steps that you might have already taken towards EV transition, like maybe having a municipal EV fleet, for example. Obviously, there will be a section about your project, the sites that you want, the amount of funding that you're asking for, and if you are looking for other sources of funding. Know that the Charge for Change program is stackable with other funding programs. So if you want to build a larger project, you can do so. Once your form is submitted, you will have to send supporting documents to the Charge for Change email address on the slide here, and that Veronique will put in the chat for you as well. Those supporting documents include a detailed project budget, quotes from service contractors that you're thinking of working with, as well as pictures of the sites and any other information that you feel will help us evaluate your application. So that's it for the presentation. Thank you all for taking the time to attend the webinar with me today. I hope you learned some valuable information. I look forward to seeing your application come through, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.